Hello, and welcome to the Spec Shaman Podcast, a show that explores the world of building product manufacturers, architects, and engineers, sustainable design, and technology and trends. We engage in thought-provoking discussions with renowned experts, industry pioneers, and visionaries who are making a significant impact in the construction industry. Join us as we explore groundbreaking ideas, revolutionary concepts, and the latest advancements shaping the built environment. The Spec Shaman Podcast is hosted by Laura Elliott, the lead instructional designer at Ron Blank and Associates. Laura is a seasoned interviewer with a passion for uncovering the untold stories behind success. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. Let's get started.
Hi, and welcome to the SPC Alliance Podcast. I'm your host, Laura Elliott. I'm joined today by Harry Purdom, director of Engima Pocket Doors. Hi, Harry. Welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Laura. Looking forward to this one. Thank you for having me.
Yes, absolutely. So I'd like to get right into it. Harry, can you tell us your origin story?
Yeah, it's a good question. Thanks, Laura. I have been in the construction industry now 15 years, a co-owner of a manufacturing company back in the UK too. And it's really stems from a family history, I guess, of working in the construction industry. My father worked in a mechanical and electrical company, and my elder brother, who I work with now, he worked for a construction company building. He was actually on the ground building new buildings, and as we started together back into right at the end of 2007. So been in the construction industry ever since I started work. And I think it's one of those industries, once you're in there, you whether you love it or hate it, you don't leave. It's a game, but it's a good game.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that take. So how did you get involved in pocket doors?
Pocket doors was one of the things that we saw a huge amount of potential with to simplify maybe the system or the way people go about it. But also it creates possibilities for those that are actually using them as well. So we saw it really fitted our why and our vision. So yeah, we got involved back in pocket doors probably 10 years ago now. So it's been a journey.
Yeah, I bet. Pocket doors are a really interesting product, and thinking retrospectively, how have pocket doors fit into the built environment?
Yeah, so traditionally, I guess, pocket doors have generally been used for the more obvious applications like bathroom doors, because of the huge benefits they can create with a lack of swing of a door. You've got the possibility of maybe if the door was opening into the bathroom, for instance, on a swing door, and you're removing that, you've now got room for a shower, or if it's to a utility room, you've now got room for a washing machine or a dryer. So there's quite obvious applications like that too. But I believe if we can change the paradigm or shift the paradigm in relation to the thinking about pocket doors, the possibilities are tremendous in terms of they could be used in so many more applications as well. I think in the past few years, pocket doors have, or say going back more than a few years, pocket doors perhaps dipped in popularity because of the experience people had with them negatively. But I think now, as the technology has improved and increased, that the usage is now, or the popularity is now increasing.
Yeah, I definitely see a modern take occurring on the pocket door. And I definitely know that there are great features about it that really incentivize design in a new way. So when you're looking at it from a design point of view, how can simplifying the process from the creation of the pocket door to the installation help the end user?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And it's really what we're all about, because it's that a whole journey, right from design through to installation, but also the end user as well. So if we look at the design, it's perhaps not thought about often enough in regards to the integration of pocket doors into the wall build-up of a property. And when I say that, it's because it forms part of the wall. It's slightly different to a traditional swing door in that a normal door they would leave an opening, and then there would come a fitter would come and install the door and frame within the opening. Happy days. With pocket doors, you've got a kind of dual element. So you've got a section which creates part of the wall as well. So there's the integration with the drywall as well as the door itself. So there's that needs to be thought about from a design and specification point of view, so that the integration is done correct, the wall thickness is correct, and the finish and so on. We then get to the installation, and the sequencing of that is really important. So you've got the aspect of the installation of the pocket before the drywall can be completed, and then you've got the installation of the door, before the whole thing can be finished, decorated, and walk away. So, and then you've got the aspect of hardware as well. But in my view, there's three main aspects when you're looking at a pocket door system that can really make a difference to the success of it. The first one is the pocket or the cage system. And this is really important because this is where the door slides into, it's where the drywall gets fixed to. And if it's not done correctly, it can cause issues with the sidewalls not being sturdy enough, which can lead to warping, or it's scraping against the door, or even jamming the door. So that's a really important one. And also, so the materials of that become really important then. The running gear is the next one. This is a kind of unseen part of the pocket door, I guess, but this is a really important aspect from a longevity and a durability perspective, because if you get that right, the smooth running and the ability to take the weight of the door over long periods of time, even if it's sitting in the same position over long periods of time and still run smoothly, that's really important. And also the lack of a design so to keep as much dirt and dust out as possible is really important. The last one is the finishing trims, or the finishing in general, because you can have the best pocket door in the world, it slides nicely, all the rest of it, but if it looks terrible, that's first impressions, and you only get one chance to make a first impression. So it's really important to make it look cool as well. And so you're looking at the different designs of the trims. Can it integrate into the existing design of the property? And is it integrated into the wall build-up system so it doesn't look like an add-on or an extra piece that they'd thought about too late down the line? So, and then probably underlying that is a guarantee from the manufacturer. Can I stand by my product to say that in 5 years, in 10 years, up until maybe the building is due to be remodeled again, can I guarantee that if designed and installed correctly, you won't have any issues? And if you do, there must be a fault with a material, and it will be replaced free of charge, for instance.
Yeah, I think these three main aspects are important to understand as the foundational issues with the reputation of pocket doors, right?
Yes, absolutely.
I think that the 80s and 90s maybe defined pocket doors poorly because these parts of the execution of the actual system weren't well done. And I think that what I'm hearing from you is we're bringing out a new reputation, and kind of, because I think the pocket door really does solve some really great space issues. That door swing takes up a lot in design. And when you can remove it, it is such a benefit, I think, to the design of a space. What are some of the standout features of this new iteration of pocket doors on the market?
Yeah, good question. Just taking a quick step back, what you were saying just now about the benefits. I think you're absolutely right. And just to give a couple of examples, take a multifamily. Certainly as they get closer in to inner city areas, apartments are becoming smaller and smaller. So we need to create as much space as possible. We've heard from governments they're trying to increase the number of units that are being built. Can we assist that by, if they can use pocket doors to the point where they can create enough space, maybe in an apartment block, to even give them an extra apartment? That's huge, right? So that's where you see large return on investment. And hotels as well. I was just in a hotel last week where I opened my bathroom door and it clashed with my closet door. And it's not a great customer experience. So that's just a couple of examples. So what you say is absolutely correct. But sorry, I digressed. You were asking about some standout features of pocket doors now, which is a great point because technology has moved on. I guess there's kind of three things that come to mind. One is the modular concept of a pocket door, because we want it to be as simple as possible to the designer or the installer or the user to understand. And because if you create simplicity, the end product is better every time, I believe. So with a modular concept, it kind of makes sense in our heads right the way from, you go back to childhood. I think that's really, I don't know the actual why of Lego, but I think that's kind of a bit of a principle in the modular concept of building up a model. Mm-hmm. So I think that really plays to our strengths as humans. The second one is the integration with the wall, as I mentioned earlier. And does the head and base channel of the system, for instance, does it fit into the wall like a stud walling system? Is it intuitive to install? Again, going back to that simplicity side, and also the guide aspect of pocket doors. So when I refer to the guide aspect, this is the way the door slides. So, and can make a big difference to the experience. And what some systems have now is a nylon guide channel which goes over the guide, which sits just inside the pocket. Now, what this does is create a completely smooth movement. Someone referred to it the other day as, I wrongly referred to it as Star Wars, but someone referred to it as more a Star Trek type sound. It's just a silent swooshing sound, which really gives a nice air of quality about it. If that's not used or it's not thought about properly, you then get this, you get a lot of wobble in the door, or you get a loud rumble as it moves, so that everything's right, and then you get to moving the door and it's just not a great customer experience. So
that moment where it like shifts incorrectly and you're like, is it going to break? Is it going to fall off?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So yeah, I think they're probably the three key ones that come to mind in terms of technology that's really moved on now in pocket doors.
That's awesome. So the technology is definitely improving. How are materials also impacting that? Because I know that materials and even some of those design features can contribute to the durability, right? And the stableness of the product. Absolutely.
So probably one of the main material changes for the positive has been using of aluminum. And this is because we all know the great aspects of aluminum. It's relatively lightweight, but the strength it gives, especially for a box section aluminum, as opposed to using maybe timber slats to create a pocket. They can really flex and warp, especially with changes in weather. But aluminum just has its memory of being completely straight. It's nice and easy to work with on site, and that's a really great move forward. Then the other one is probably the materials of the rollers themselves, so the running gear. So traditionally, it may have even been a metal roller, but we're going back some years now. But there's different aspects of the roller, but particularly the wheels themselves. Rather than just being any kind of plastic, are they hard wearing enough to last the test of time with the oscillating movement? Do they can they take a lot of weight? If they, like, for instance, with pocket doors, for instance, they may sit in one position for a long period of time, and if that's the case, does it create what we refer to as a flat on the bottom of the wheel? If it's underweight, just sitting there, and what that will do, if it creates a flat, you then move the door, and it then sounds like a train track. So there are a couple of things that really have moved forward in terms of materials wise with pocket doors, which has make a big difference.
Well, that's a good mashup, of technology and materials improving this whole system. To quote the great Fletch, it's all ball bearings though. And I was hoping that you could help me to break down the differences between a bushing, a ball bearing, and a needle bearing, and how that is improving pocket door systems.
Yeah, great question. And this is another aspect of the rollers themselves. So where the axle meets the unit that is holding the wheels, you can get the normal bushing. You can just get where the axle is pushed through the main unit holding the wheels, and there's no particular mechanism that the wheels are rolling on. What happens there is certainly underweight, and over time the axle can bend. If it's not held securely, it can rumble and break a lot easier. Basically, it wouldn't give a very smooth running. You then get probably the most popular, as you refer to, the ball bearing. That's probably the most well-known type of bearing for constant movement, and maybe from various different industries. The interesting thing with pocket doors, or sliding doors in general, but where ball bearings are used, with the oscillating movement of pocket doors, the balls can shift in position because they're not complete in the channel all the way around the wheel. And what happens then is you can get an uneven weighting on the axle where the balls have shifted, which can create a weakness in that bearing. And then if it's slightly abused, or the door is slammed, or you've got an extra heavy door, it can create a weakness and then potentially crack, break the wheel. So something we looked into in some detail, but the needle bearing really solves both those issues, in that it holds its lubricant in, so it lasts an incredible amount of time, and they're captured needle bearings, so it's really small cylinders all the way around the axle, so they're always in the same position, so you've got equal loading all the way around, and with the lubricant that's captured in there as well, it just lasts for a huge amount of time longer. So it really can make a big difference. Whilst it's quite an unseen aspect of pocket doors or sliding doors, it can make a big difference in terms of the longevity and lasting the test of time.
Well, and I know that longevity is important, especially to this new reputation for pocket doors. So that's a lot of amazing things for one product space, and it's kind of exciting to hear, because I know barn doors kind of like showed up for a while there about a decade ago, and are really definitely still kind of having a lot of staying power, but their original form in some ways is that pocket door. And I think I know myself personally, I've always liked a pocket door. I just wanted it to glide a little bit better. So if there's been some great improvements, let's get the word out on that for sure.
No, I was just going to say that that's a great point. And I believe, this might be a controversial point, but I think barn doors potentially came out of the issues with pocket doors.
Yeah.
So they're kind of a bit of an in-between of a sliding door and a pocket door, a swing door and a pocket door, sorry, because they do slide, so they don't swing out into the room, but they still take up space in a room, and they can if the design isn't for that, they can look a little bit messy as well. So
Mm.
yeah, I think you're right. If we can change the paradigm or shift the paradigm around pocket doors, I think that can make a big difference.
And I think you're right. I think that undercurrent of popularity, while it might have been aesthetically pleasing to see this barn door and all its glory and hardware and things like that, I think that what really probably promoted it to the level of popularity it achieved was because it was functionally important to design. And, it's great to know that pocket doors are kind of like saying, hey, wait a second, we can accomplish that too. And in some of the spaces where a barn door just really doesn't make logistical sense, a pocket door can answer a need that's there. And I kind of see this huge potential in optimizing space, which we've touched on already. But how does the pocket door impact modern buildings with
Yeah, that's a
space?
great question. And we touched on it a little bit earlier, but as we said, they've traditionally been used for maybe bathroom doors, utility room doors. But as I said right at the beginning, I believe pocket doors could be used in almost every scenario internally in a property, whether that be in a home or a hotel room. They can they not only save space, they say you're talking up to maybe 10, 11 square foot of a room, which is a huge amount of space.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not only saving space, but they can actually create space as well. So if you can design a space, an interior with the use of pocket doors, you could create so much more usable space. I was talking to an architect the other day, and they said that they managed to fit, by using pocket doors in their office, they managed to fit 50% more people in their office without increasing their office space, which is huge.
That's fabulous.
So the possibilities are massive, and if we can change that paradigm, I think the advantages of pocket doors can really be used more, and they can be increased in terms of using. Maybe it might be to a bedroom door, or between something we're starting to see a little bit more is between maybe a living room and a dining room, where it kind of opens out the space into a single room. That's quite a common one as well. So there's definitely some big benefits in increasing that usage a lot.
Yeah, and they definitely, I think that even from an ADA standpoint, I think they answer a need that that other doors can't, by just creating a better pathway for egress. Do you notice
Absolutely.
that?
Yes, no, that's a great point with ADA, and it's always a conversation to be had. Is it easier for them to use a swing door or a sliding door? But I think with not having to move around a door that's swinging either way, that has to be helpful for someone that's maybe in a wheelchair or something like that. It has to be easier to move a door from one side to the other rather than pulling it out, pushing it in, and then having to move around it. So yeah, I would agree.
So really, is it the functionality of the hardware that made pocket doors less commonly used? Is that really kind of like the heart of the issue?
Yes, I would say that would probably be one of the main reasons. Yeah, because that is a user experience, right? But that's when you're using it in your home. That's what you mainly experience, is the functionality of the hardware. For instance, we'd been in an Airbnb recently, and the lock on the door, it was a pocket door. We had to kind of manhandle the door out of the pocket, and then to lock it, it's got this tiny little bit of metal to try and lock the door, which was awkward, and then feels like it gets stuck as well. So that can have a big impact, because when the user experience is bad, that always feeds back right the way back to design on new properties as well. So I would agree that would be one of the main reasons.
So then at the core of it, the importance of proper installation and maintenance is a huge deal for pocket doors. Can you expound on that at all?
Yeah, so the installation, absolutely. Ideally, you want to be in a position where you don't actually the maintenance isn't required. So if you can use a pocket door that is designed to last the test of time, and it can be designed, integrated into the design correctly, and it's installed properly, that's you shouldn't even need to the maintenance part. That makes sense. So that's a definite that could be a definite benefit.
And I know the end user probably would really appreciate that from a financial standpoint as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what are some common flaws found in other pocket door systems?
So there are a number of different aspects to pocket doors, as we've said, but some from quite extensive research we've done, there are some issues around flimsy sidewalls. So where they're creating the pocket or the cage for the door to slide into, if that easily moves and warps, when the framers fix the drywall to the side of the pocket and put a bit of pressure on, that can they then fix the drywall, and that potentially fixes it in place with the side bowed already. So then you start getting scraping on the door and issues like that. Then you've got finishing options or the lack of finishing options. So as I mentioned earlier, if there's no way to finish it nicely, it can then become a little bit clunky and look like it's been a bit of an afterthought in the design. So that can again, it goes back to user experience. Bad quality running gear, I think, is a key aspect of this, and we've covered the aspect of bearings and how the wheels operate inside the track, because that can also lead to rattling or jumping or even bouncing, where especially there's some we've seen that the track is almost just a side track, and that's where we've seen the doors actually jump or bounce out of the track itself, that's when you've got big issues.
Yeah, that's not ideal.
Yeah, and then the bottom guide as well, as I mentioned previously, some haven't even got that at all. So you've then got as you pull the door, you've got no point in which the door is being held at the bottom, so it can move, and then you're struggling to align it, especially if you're going to lock it for a bathroom door, things like that. So that's definitely some of the issues we've seen. And then the issue with barn style doors. So they're still relatively popular, I'd say. For instance, in our Airbnb, we've got 2 or 3 sets there, but they've jumped off their guide. So as you go to close the door, it literally swings right out. But they can also gather dirt and so on top of the track, which then, as the wheels roll on top of you, then it kind of captures it in the wheels, and then you've got a rumbling experience. But also they take up part of the room. So there's one that goes from the living room into a kind of play area, and it always clashes with the sofa, which is there. So you always have to move the sofa out of the way to open the door, and it's just really a bit of an annoyance as you move around the house. So yeah, there's definitely a few other things that we've seen from our quite extensive research, I'd say, with existing options.
Yeah, they kind of live in a similar space, the barn door and the pocket door. But there's some pretty key differences, and cleaning your fan and probably cleaning the top of your door hardware for your barn door they're not they're probably on the very bottom of a long list of household chores. So, and that's probably not something you think about, when you're looking at a product like that. And it's really great that there's been these improvements in the hardware of pocket doors that makes them more functional and doesn't require that cleaning or maintenance. So these technical aspects that you're talking about with pocket doors kind of make them seem very superior. The running gear and the bearings that are used are really helpful. So how do you celebrate those accomplishments?
One of the main ones is getting the word out there. And I guess this podcast today is one of those aspects. Is spreading the word really about we can now do this in a different and a better way. And it's about trying to make as much noise about that as you can in the right space. Because I genuinely believe that there's such big benefits from right the way from the design aspect right the way through to the user experience. They do need to be celebrated, or the word got out there, because there's some big benefits to be had.
I think so too. And hopefully this helps get that word out there, and I'm thinking about like the aluminum frame that you discussed. How does that benefit the installation process and that overall durability?
Yeah, good question. So with aluminum, with the aspects of the aluminum material being a lightweight material, so it's nice and easy to use on site. It's also easy to cut if required as well. But it's also a strong material, especially when you're looking at a box section type profile of aluminum. Creating a pocket, you've only got, say, take a 4-inch stud. You've got to fit a door and a tolerance gap either side of that door in that 4 inches before you then do the side studs as well. So you've only got a minimum amount of space to create maximum strength possible before it's then the drywall goes over the top and it's all integrated in. So with the use of aluminum, it can really make that process simpler and easier, because they don't need to be so worried about the timber warping or anything like that. It can act like a stud walling system, so it can be quite intuitive as well. So you can have a head and base channel like a stud wall, and then the side studs slide into that, and then the drywall can be fixed straight over the top. So it gives you a lot of adaptability with the system, I think, with the aluminum.
It's a mighty feat of adaptability in a small amount of space. It's very cool. Can you explain the significance of the needle bearing in the running gear and how that impacts the overall performance?
Yeah, so I think, as we mentioned previously, the difference in the different bearing types with the needle bearing, because of the equal loading and the consistency of it, it then just allows the door to move backwards and forwards with the oscillating movement over time, or if it's sitting there for any amount of time, it allows that to continue to work consistently over a very long period of time. For instance, with our system, we tested it to 100,000 cycles, and then we left it for a couple of weeks completely still, and then we tested it again, and that was all under load as well. So just over 300 pounds of weight on it as well. So and we wanted to do that. That was really important to us to make sure that the theories were correct in practice as well, because it's one thing talking about these things, but to actually have proved it and physically tested it in a lab with the exact scenario I think can give a lot of confidence.
Yeah, testing really matters. It's one thing to talk about it and maybe promote it in a way, but the authenticity of performance that's provable, I think, is such a big deal. What is the customization like for pocket doors? Are there size restrictions? How does is the frame visible or not? And how do people kind of fit handles?
Yeah, good question. So again, with pocket doors, because they're integrating into a wall system, and often they are integrating in a design along with other swing doors as well, it's important for them to look like they're not just an afterthought or a last minute add-in. So there are size parameters and restrictions, and depending on what system you use, for instance, will give you different limitations. For instance, that's the system we provide can go up to a 5 foot wide by 9'6" high. So it gives you a lot lot of a flexibility from a size point of view from that aspect. But then you've got the finishing options, which it's not so common with systems still that they provide these finishing options. For us, it was quite important to do so because it really takes that aspect out from an installer's head. They have to think about how to finish it in with their wall. If we can provide the finishing trims for them, it removes that headache for them. So, for instance, we do 2 different types. So you can get a visible frame with the timber jambs going all round to look like a normal timber door frame, and then the trims can be fixed straight to that. The other design is a concealed frame, so it gets fitted to the drywall, on top of the drywall, and then can be mudded in with the rest of the wall. So that conceals the frame completely. And this is quite often used for, say, to a utility room or an area in a home where they want it to look like just an opening in a wall rather than a doorway.
Yeah.
They conceal the frame completely, and then it can just look like a wall opening. So that's a really cool feature as well.
Like, are they part of like the secret room movement that's happening in design?
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. Yeah.
I love those reels. I'm like, I could watch that all day. I'm like, where's the secret room now? So how can pocket doors be tailored to fit the various architectural and design needs?
No, this is a good question because not all can easily, but ideally you want to integrate the pocket door be able to integrate it into different designs. So you might have a more of a traditional design of an interior that is having big, grand trims around the door, or they might be going for a really sleek look they're trying to hide the frames, trying to do it very a clinical type finish, where they might want to conceal it. Or there might be other aspects, features like full height doors. So they might want to integrate the door into the ceiling itself, so it looks like almost like a moving wall. Quite a common scenario is where you have perpendicular walls where the door closes into, especially in apartment scenarios as they're getting smaller. The door may be closing up against an external wall. So you want to have a finishing trim which creates a recess for the door to slide into. So you remove the sight line, and also gives the fitter a little bit of tolerance, because if it just finishes up against a flat wall, if there's any movement in the perpendicular level of that door, you see it immediately because you've just got the light bleed through. And then you've got a couple of different aspects as well, like an offset wall thickness, where we would see it probably more often in the UK, but I know it's starting to grow a little bit in the US as well, where you would have a bathroom pod or a modular construction within a building, and then they're linking their wall systems up to that, and you may have an offset wall thickness, and the other one is custom joinery integration. So they may have wall paneling around a particular area, and they want to integrate this pocket door into this custom joinery. So again, almost a little bit like that hidden door scenario, they can pull this door out of what seemingly looks just like this beautiful bit of timber paneling around a section in the interior.
So there are differences between concealed and visible frames. How can they each be used?
Yes, as I mentioned previously, it really depends on the type of design that the designer is going for, whether it be a more traditional or a more modern look, or it may be a functionality aspect. So it may be they're trying to integrate with other swing doors in the property which have trims around already, so they want it to look like the same design, or they may want it to look like an opening in a wall, as I mentioned. So it really comes back to the designer and what their intention is. But what we have always wanted to be able to do is give them the option. So we want to give them that adaptability in the system, so they can create the design that they want while still using a pocket door.
That's very cool. There's a lot of thought that's going into this, and the more you explain it, I think it really does answer some pretty specific needs. How is it being received in the U.S. market?
It's a great question. It's been I've been over in the US for a number of weeks now, and had a lot of meetings with different types of companies, right from distributors, hardware distributors, to architects, to developers, and it's been had a great reception. Had some really good feedback. Some tweaks in design or the way we provide the door in the US have been really helpful. The distribution route has been really important as well. Mm. But generally, I think as we can show the pain points, for instance, I had a meeting the other day with someone, and I started off the meeting by saying, well, we don't use them very much, but interested in what you've got to show me, kind of thing. And I started going through just a short presentation on what we'd found, the challenges from our research, and the way we've looked to overcome these in our system and so on. And he kind of stopped me halfway through and said that this hasn't come up recently as a national problem for us. There's a conversation that's going on that, do we remove these from our designs, or can we sort the problems out? So there definitely is there's a need there. We just need to get the word out there that there's the possibilities. I guess the area of the lower end area where you can get them en masse, or maybe delivered next day from an online or from a local store, that's maybe covered and not where we've particularly been talking to people. It's more where people are interested or need them to last the test of time. So that maybe a developer that's holding on to their buildings for a number of years and renting out, they don't want to be called back every 6 months saying, I've got a problem, we need to change this, fix this. Or if they're selling a property, but they have a 12-month defect period, for instance, they don't want to be at the end of that, or even halfway through that, they don't want to be having to go back in there, because any money that they would have saved on what they put in has immediately disappeared with the money they've had to spend to go in and replace it or repair it. So yeah, it's been great to bring it to the US market. I had some great conversations, been received well. There's always a cost aspect as well. For instance, our system is more expensive than maybe what they've had previously, but once we can show the benefits of using the system, and if it can last the test of time without having to revisit it, the return on investment can then be really visible for them to see.
No, I think that from a global standpoint, we're kind of all sitting at this nexus, right? Of, can we get it fast and cheap, and then it lasts 3 months, and then we're back spending the same money and energy to put the original idea in place. And I see that in almost every industry. So I think the pivot for the pocket door market is, I think that it's the progression of using the technology and the better materials to make it more functional and durable and long lasting, that kind of entices an entire new set of users for it. I think that everybody probably really liked a pocket door when it first arrived. They probably were like, yes, this is great. And then the functionality really created an issue for the reputation of the pocket door. And it's a really nice pivot to see that we can leverage the technology and the materials to make something of quality and bring back something that I think people were pretty enamored with, at its inception.
Yeah, agreed. And I think has been the issue. And if we can change that, if we can help to spread that word, I think yes, I think they could. The popularity could increase quite significantly and fast.
Do you see the residential and hospitality sectors really being first in line in that pivot?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's where they were probably used more previously too. I think they're the more obvious applications. So you've got the likes of bathrooms, particularly maybe utility rooms. But there's now other aspects to think about, like the ADA requirements, and in maybe more of a commercial scenario, even if a hotel, for instance, we did a hotel recently where they used them for between kitchen and the kitchen area and the serving area. And we also do a motorized or power assisted system. So it operated on a sensor. So as they walked through, it would open for them. So not only it removed any kind of swing and potential for them to knock the plates out of their hand, but it also could move out of the way for them as they walk through. So it just really smoothed that experience out. So there's that aspect as well, that it seems to be increasing it. Obviously, there's a significant cost impact, but where it's required, there is now the possibility to do that, where it's power assisted. You can get a touchless sensor, so you just wave your hand and the door will open for you. And acoustics is the other one. That's certainly in more commercial aspects is becoming more of a thing too. So, for instance, that system, we can now provide it as an acoustic system. So it can be used for maybe an office or a meeting room where they need that sound reduction as well. So there's I think an increasing number of aspects or scenarios or applications, should I say, that pocket doors can be used moving forward.
Yeah, I love the automation aspect of that. I know you mentioned Star Trek earlier.
Yeah.
So I definitely see where it could head. And then, we also are having this lockstep conversation about access control and managing users in certain environments and spaces. And there's just definitely so much application to what a pocket door can do in the future of it. What are some of those innovative products or features that meet market needs in the future?
Yes, it's a great question. So it comes back to hardware again. So you've got the standard running gear, which we've spoken about, but then there's other aspects like soft close, or some people refer to it to a catch and close or easy close. A bit like maybe a kitchen cupboard where it catches the door, say 4 inches away from the end and just pulls it in slowly. It's a really nice feature. So you can do a soft close or a soft close and open. So you can do it both ways. Another thing we brought to the US market is we call it a spring-loaded magnetic touch catch. And what this does is remove the need for any hardware on the edge of the door. So when the door is into the pocket, it's held by a magnet and it's on a sprung piston. So you can just push the door in by 1/2 inch to 1 inch and it springs it out of the pocket and you can actually grab the handles on the side. So that's another really nice feature if they're trying to hide the door into the design. And it's a really nice aspect to use if you're using that alongside a soft close. So they work really well in tandem. There's also other things like we call it a remote stop, which this is a really interesting part. With pocket doors, because they're integrated into the wall as well, sometimes when the wall is all finished and then the door is installed, the stop at the back of the track where it actually stops where the door finishes, it's a little bit of guesswork before everything's all finished. So if the door isn't quite in the correct place, you're then looking at cutting a hole in the side of the wall to adjust the stop and so on. So what we did, we wanted to remove that hassle. So what we introduced was a remote stop where it's connected at the top of the track to within the opening itself. So you can actually adjust and fix the stop position of the door from within the door opening, if that makes sense. Which again just removes another potential headache for the installer, or in future if they're wanting to if, for instance, the door finishes flush with the end of the pocket when they first finish the project, but in future they need to, for ADA purposes, they may need to introduce a D handle or something, they can then easily adjust the door out and integrate the handle into the door. So that's just another aspect that we've introduced as well.
What a lovely time to be involved in this market. There's really cool thought that's going behind some of the, I mean, and I kind of love that in life anyway, right? You know, somebody's like, these are the challenges, and you're like, great, let me make solutions. Like, you know,
Absolutely,
and it seems like you're deploying a series of solutions that can really, I think, inspire an entire market to do better and to build better and to make these things much more functional so they can be applied where they're really needed. Is that, you know, what excites you about the future of pocket doors and keeps you motivated while you're working in this industry?
That's a great question, because it is exciting. I think there's a lot of work to be done in terms of getting the word out there and working with designers and installers and so on. But what excites me is the possibilities. I think going forward, pocket doors could have a profound impact on the space planning and interior design in the future. I think with the different possibilities of the different aspects of the system, whether that be sizings, ratings, ADA requirements, things like that, I think in the future, I think we could see them having a very large impact. And we could even see developers, for instance, in the UK, we have this, they've introduced a new legislation where they have to have a second staircase in an apartment building. So they're losing apartment space. But with the ability to use pocket doors, can we give them the ability to be able to regain that space within the building? And over here, can they create new rooms? Can they create new apartments? Can it really, I think it can open a lot of possibilities, and it, as you say, inspire generations to come.
No, I definitely can appreciate that. And you're changing the equation, you know, and that's really instrumental, I think, in design and in product development. So it's very cool. It's been a pleasure to listen to you talk about pocket doors. And I mean that genuinely. I think it's a very cool market. So I do have a closing question that I'd like to ask you.
Perfect.
So there's a primary goal of this podcast, and that's to build a catalog of wisdom for the industries that we serve. What is one piece of industry wisdom you would like to share with our audience in closing?
What a great question that is. Don't be stuck with what you've always done. The expression, if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you always got. And the definition of insanity is doing the same thing and expecting different outcomes. I think don't just be satisfied with what you've always done. I think that would be a key message from me.
I love that. Well, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your insight. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Spec Shaman Podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe to our show and leave us a review. The Spec Shaman Podcast is produced by Laura Elliott and Brad Blank. A huge thank you to our guests who made this show possible. Building product manufacturers who want to increase their specification opportunities, please visit specshaman.com or ronblank.com. Thanks all for this episode, folks. See you next time.